Welcome back to the show. And we have another episode today of Impact Makers. And again, somebody who just jumped in my mind, actually jumped in front of me in the Fred Meyer aisle. And I thought, perfect. That's exactly who I want to have on. Anne Ruddis is an incredible human who has an amazing story that's going to humble you beyond measure. And we will probably talk a little bit about that because it's going to be in alignment with the impact that she's here to make in the world. And I'm saying this completely authentically because not just because you're on the show, because I truly feel this way. Like there's very few people in this world that I look to and be like, wow, like I know I can learn a ton from that person. Like I value that person so much. I'm just honored to be in your presence and to like have the opportunity to, just to build a relationship and be in each other's lives. Like you are that person to me. And you humble me so much. And every single time I hear you speak or hear what you're taking on in the world or learn more about your story, I'm just like, wow, I'm just floored and amazed by you and just appreciate you so much for how you have leaned into life and overcome what you've overcome and to continue to give back. So like, thank you for setting that example for the rest of us to follow. Like that model to me is completely cherished. And I just want you to know that. And I wanted to wait to tell you that until we hit record. So the world could hear how I feel about your just overall sense of being that you put out to the world. Right. And so thank you. And so we're excited to have you on. And yeah, we're going to explore a little bit.
Well, that is amazing. And I am very excited to be here. And honestly, I feel the same way about the two of you. I'm just so happy our paths have crossed. And it's interesting because the way we see ourselves is many times very different than the way others see us. And so your response is humbling and thank you. Thank you
I
for
think it's
that.
important for other people to ask people like, how do you see me? Because then you start to like, oh, wow, that's not how I see myself. It'd be okay
Right.
for us to walk around treating ourselves the way other people see us. Like that would make the world a better place, right? That's a
Wouldn't
whole
that be interesting?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's maybe that's a podcast idea. We'll write that down. We'll write that down for later.
Our kids are starting to say, oh, that's a podcast idea because they hear us say that so much.
Write that down.
Bringing them up early.
Yeah, they're on it. They want to do podcasts with us. Where did we first cross paths? Is it BNI is where we met? Or is it something previous to that?
I believe it was at BNI.
BNI. So, yeah, we were in a networking group together called Business.
Yes.
Yeah. So excellent. So let's just fire off this conversation unless you have anything.
No, I'm excited. I've been privy to so many conversations actually that the two of you guys have had that I've kind of just chirped in here and there, but ran into each other or we were doing something and the conversation it could have just kept going and going and going. It was that good.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what started to happen when we ran into each other at the grocery store the last time. And then we said, you know what, we need to have you on the podcast because other people need to hear these conversations. It's really powerful.
So I'm excited and nervous to hear where we go with this one. So we start this conversation by asking, we all believe that we all have a specialty role or a specialty function in the world. And what we experience in our lives is pointing us towards that specialty role. Right. And so the sooner that we can find it, explore it, expand it, and engage with it, the better, right? And so a lot of times the easy way for people to start to be curious about what their specialty role is for them to explore what is the hole that they see in the universe, in the world. It may be a problem that needs to be solved. It may be some way that you feel like because of your past experiences, you can contribute. Does that make sense? So what is that hole that you see in the world that's like, oh yeah, I can help. I can fill that one.
Well, I think for me, one of the biggest things is our lack of connection with each other. We live in a culture that we silo ourselves off. And I work in the nonprofit field. And so my daily experience is reaching out to people and letting them know about things that other people are going through, challenges that other people are having, and also offering them an opportunity to help, to be able to give back. And with it, by doing that, they're not just helping others, they're helping themselves. And I really think that's the piece that that I like to be able to highlight, that everything is reciprocal. Every conversation we have, every encounter we have, everything that we do is connected to everything else.
Yeah.
And I think that when we can highlight that, that's something to that's something that fills me up. Being able to see things and make connections with other people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, what I hear from that is one of the benefits that goes beyond just helping each other is to know that we're not alone. Whether somebody has dealt with loss, or, you know, maybe someone's fighting something in their lives, overcoming some sort of struggle, financial, relational, whatever, like, oh, you've been there. Oh, it's not me. I'm not the only one. Right. Even just being self-critical, like, oh, wow. Like you beat yourself up too. Like, no, wow. Really? Like, yeah, we're all humans. And this is the interesting piece. Like, this is the piece that I feel like points back to some of the work that we do, is if we can normalize the human experience, there's a certain level of suffering happening. There's all these things there's a certain normal, if we can normalize it, then it brings us together, right? It makes us feel more connected, right? And less,
yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think too, that one of the things that I work very closely with is grief. And I've had a lot of grief in my life. I've had to process through a lot of things. And when we have become a society that tries to medicate grief away, and, you know, just this last year, they've made prolonged grief actually a diagnosable condition, which is incorrect. And just like you said, we need to normalize human emotions. And part of being human is being sad. And that is not something that we should medicate away or try to suppress. And that's another part of something that I would like to bring out is the isolation that people feel when they're grieving. They feel like, just like you said, am I the only one feeling this? And to know that, no, you're not alone. And no, grief is not something that you're going to get over in 6 months or a year. It's something that you're going to process through for the rest of your life as part of the human condition. And so to bring that into the public discourse, I think is very important, especially now. We're dealing with a lot of cultural grief. I mean, every day you look at the headlines and you see these horrible things that are happening, and nobody is going to escape it. So
and that gave me chills when you were saying, I hear that so loud and clear, the passion in your voice when you're talking about wanting people to know that they're not alone, and that this isn't something that you just pour that toxic positivity over and go, okay, like I should be over this by now, so I'm gonna, you know, pretend I'm okay, right? But actually having a place, I'm here, that's what I'm hearing, like a place. And I know you have some things that you're doing with that for people to connect that are feeling alone in their suffering, in their grief, in their part of their human experience. That is, I don't know. It almost, to me, seems like people feel like they need to hide it and just put on a happy face and say, I'm fine.
Yes, you know, and we condition people to do that. And so when you're dealing with grief, you're not only dealing with these immense emotions, you're also dealing with these cultural messages that you're not okay. And unless you can be okay, don't be around me. And so when you go out into public, you have to smile, you have to, interact. We give 3 days bereavement from work, and that's insane, because it's something that, like I said, is going to be with you. And the other thing that I think is really important is we can also get lost in those emotions. And I think if we can develop within ourselves an understanding that this is a wave that's going to pass through us, that we should embrace and feel fully, but we don't have to stay stuck there. And being able to move from one moment to the next and be in those moments fully, I think is, I've seen people 20 years, 30 years still in the same place they were, because they would not embrace those emotions, would not embrace those feelings. And like you said, normalize them. They are normal. Yeah. And I think it's on all of us to connect with each other and to really listen to each other and hear what people are saying, and on each other.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the question that popped into my mind, and this is something that has recently come up. I had someone close to me lose someone very close in their life, and reached out to another friend and said, how do I support this person? I think a lot of people don't understand how to support someone who is grieving, and they're kind of afraid to even get involved in suffering that is that deep. Right? They just kind of want to give their initial condolence and then sort of move on. And what are some ways that someone can help support someone who is going through those waves? Because that's the way my friend has described it to me. It's like a wave, and then I'll feel kind of somewhat normal for a little while, and then another wave will come, and then I have to process through that. And I guess my question to you as someone who's, been through a great deal of grief and continues to go through the process is, how, as loved ones and friends, can we support those people better?
I think that's a great question. And I don't think there's any one answer. I believe that much of the way we support others depends on the relationship that we have with them. So there's a model of grief when someone is, and it's concentric circles that go out. In the center is the person who's grieving, and outside spouse, children, parents, they're in that circle. Outside, the next level is where they is your friends and acquaintances, and they can support in. But many times what happens is those people in that next circle are grieving themselves. And they hurt for their friend, they hurt for their loved ones, and you're right, they don't know how to help. And so they tend to seek support from within that initial circle, rather than going to their next level and finding another layer. So I think that the most important thing is to realize what your relationship is with that person, first of all. And then the other thing that drives me totally insane is all of these lists that we see out there. Don't say this to a grieving person. Don't say that to a grieving person. And I think people have become afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing. And if they say the wrong thing, they're going to cause more damage, or they're going to cause more hurt. So they don't say anything at all. And that doesn't mean they don't care. It just means that they're afraid to say the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have people that do say the wrong thing that cause people to hurt. And again, it's not the wrong thing. They're reflecting who they are. They're reflecting their relationships. And I think if we can become within ourselves, if we can get grounded in the fact that this person at least is trying to help.
Yeah.
And then be able to foster a conversation. There were times when I was in the depths of grief and people would say things to me that, oh, geez, what did you do in another lifetime to deserve this? Something like that, right? And I mean, it's not any different than a lot of the religious, you're being punished for your sins. A lot of those cultural messages are still out there. And when things like that would happen, I had a choice. And I think one of the things that we don't always realize is we have a choice on how to receive that. Yeah. And if I am feeling insecure, if I feel I'm being punished, that's going to hit me in a completely different way than this is someone else's mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And I had to work through a lot. I was raised in the Catholic religion. So I had to work through a lot of that sin and guilt and all of those pieces, thinking that, oh my gosh, what did I do to deserve all of this loss in my life? And it's a long process. And so when when you want to help someone and you want to be there for them, honestly, it's not so much about what you say. It's about just being there, about showing up. And if you say something and you find that it appears that you've hurt someone, apologize. Have a conversation. None of us have to be perfect, and none of us are perfect.
Isn't that a relief?
Yes, right?
Yeah.
You again have just amazed me, like your mindset of the only word that comes to my mind is you're a creator, right? And the creator is one that's able to choose what they make the circumstance that they're currently experiencing mean. Mm-hmm. And we kind of mentioned Viktor Frankl's work before we hopped on and hit record, right? That to me is 100% in alignment. And the through line that I'm hearing as you guys are talking, and I'm doing my best to bite my tongue because I want to just like ask you the next question is this through line is this level of avoidance, right? And so the opposite of creator is victim, right? And so there is this consciousness that is out there that people want to avoid, whether they're medicating to lose weight or for depression or for grief or whatever it is. There's a place and a time for medication. I'm not saying there isn't, but there is a place and a time for it, right? But yet, how can we come to a deeper understanding of the human experience and not judge it, right? And just to accept it, right? And to accept the emotions. And so before we move forward with this conversation, I think it's important for the listeners to just maybe get a screenshot of when we're talking about this grief that you've experienced. Do you mind giving us maybe just a quick, order of events that you experienced so we can hear and kind of just have that moment of like, okay, we definitely, should listen to what this woman has to say. Yeah.
Do you want to know my credentials here?
I want to know what has led you to this clarity. I mean, this is what this is, right? Our life experiences based upon how we right. Embrace them and or accept them and allow them to be there without resistance and bring our attention to them fully, and like feel it all the way to completion and then stay on that path is what leads to the clarity of you recognizing the whole and the connection and being able for other people to be heard and all of these different aspects of grief, but to overcome these cultural messages, right? That this one hit home for me, unless you can be okay, don't be around me. Like, man, that I felt that go up and down my spine.
Right.
And actually
right.
feeling some emotions around it. So
yeah,
I want to hear what has led you to this clarity that you have within your human experience. Yeah.
Okay, so let me start out by saying I had one of the most densest consciousnesses ever, and I had a very strong ego. And I was the type of person that was very independent, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of person all my life, very independent. And when my first child was born, my daughter, she was 16 months old, she was diagnosed with cancer. And that was the first time that I realized that these bad things can happen to me, right? Because we see things happening out in the world and we never think it's going to happen to us. It always happens to someone else. So that was my first introduction in, okay, this can happen to me. She went through 2 years of treatment and she was basically cured. Well, the cure ended up causing a secondary cancer when she was 7 years old. And she was diagnosed with leukemia a year into my husband's treatment for cancer. So the both of them were going through cancer treatments at the same time. And I also had 2 young sons at the time. And so when I think back on those days, I'm not quite sure how I did it. But I can tell you that I did not do it alone. I had to learn how to accept help from others. And for me, that was one of the biggest obstacles that I personally had to overcome, was to realize that the things that were happening in my life were so big that I needed support. I needed help. And so being able to reach out and connect. My husband and my daughter both passed away in 1994, within 4 months of each other. My husband died in April and my daughter died in August. And my boys were 5 and 7 at the time. And I came to a place of, okay, what do I do now? Because I knew that my life had changed, our life had changed, and I needed to figure out how to move forward. Around my husband and my daughter's deaths, I had some amazing spiritual occurrences, synchronicities. And I wrote about them in when my daughter passed. She wrote a book called A Kid with Cancer before she passed, because she wanted to be able to help other kids with cancer. And she realized that she wasn't going to get to be a social worker. She wasn't going to grow up and get to be a social worker. So she decided to write this little book. For years, and I promised her, I made her a deathbed promise. I promised her I would publish it. So for years, I tried to figure out, what am I going to do with this? And she goes, Mom, you can add stuff to it. So it's okay. Just make sure you publish it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I played around with it. I rewrote it. I did all kinds of things. I sent it off to publishers. I did all kinds of crazy things in those first couple of years. Nothing came of it, of course. And so then my son was diagnosed at 10 years old with a brain tumor. And when that happened, I mean, when Carrie and Nikki passed, I was in a place of light, of connection. I could see those two were here for each other. Those two had a soul journey. They were here, and me and my boys were part of that journey. But as hard as it was to lose them, I also had this strong faith that was not built on any religion that I was raised with, but something that I fashioned together. And then when Michael was diagnosed at 10 years old, all of that went out the window. And I went to a very different place. I was convinced that he was going to survive. And I thought, okay, I want to be a writer. This will make a great story. I'll be able to write about one child who passed from cancer, one child who survived. And when he died at 12 years old, I was devastated. And I went to a place of chaos and loss, and that nothing is connected. There's a amazing movie called I Heart Huckabees that really lays this out beautifully. It's an older movie, and it's Dustin Hoffman and Lily Tomlin play existential detectives, and it's kind of a brutal movie, and it's some dark humor, which is right up my alley. But in one aspect, they talked about how life is a sheet. You know, I'm part of you, you're part of me, we're all part of the same thing, and everything's connected. And then they bring in like a Nietzsche character who says, nothing's connected, it's all chaos, we're just down here in the mud. And that really exemplifies my experiences. When Nikki and Carrie passed, I was the sheet. When Michael passed, I went to that chaos place. And again, I had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this? I still had my other son, and I decided I had been going back to school for journalism. And then when Michael got sick, I had to quit. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go back again. I'm going to go get my degree in journalism. So I went to Gonzaga, and I got on the paper and I started writing, and I realized I can't do this. I couldn't care about campus life. I couldn't care about those things. So I sunk myself into philosophy and religion, and really wrestled with those concepts. Viktor Frankl's book was one of the books that I credit with saving me. After Nikki and Carrie passed, that was my go-to book. Was why does suffering exist at all? First of all, not just why am I suffering, but why does it exist? Why is it part of the human condition? Is it really that necessary ingredient for us to grow? And if so, who designed this system? Because I wanted to have a word or two with them, right? It's
Couldn't
like,
agree
no,
more. That is really resonating with me right there. The Viktor Frankl and the man's search for meaning, and like, I need to understand this whole suffering thing, because
right.
I got massive resistance to it. This is complete BS. Right? I came here for this.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there are those that will tell us we actually chose this. And the whole idea of a soul contract. And I've entertained so many ideas and so many concepts, not just ancient philosophers, but I remember digging through some ancient writings and some philosophical writings, and coming to the conclusion that they didn't know the answer either. No one knows the answer. All we have are the questions. And so then it became about, well, where are these questions going to lead us? And we talked about choice earlier. Sometimes you don't know that you have a choice. When you're feeling a certain way, you get overtaken with that. And to understand that, oh, wait, I could maybe see this a different way. That takes grace. That takes a break in your consciousness to be able to shift even that little bit. And so, where I'm at today and where I was at 20 years ago are completely different places. And I see life and death in a very, very different way. And it's almost like I've kind of been able to embrace the impersonal universe. I don't know if you've ever read any of Wayne Dyer's stuff, but I never really read his books, but I used to listen to him a lot when he would speak. I found him a very engaging speaker, and he would talk about the books he read, and I would go to those books, and because it was like, okay, I want to find out what you know. And one of the things that I found through that was the idea of the impersonal universe, right? The idea that it's not personal. It feels like it is, but it isn't. And to be able to get to a place where I can see my life as part of a greater piece of a fabric. And I think what, over the Apollo's temple at Delphi is the adage to know thyself. And when we start to really discover who we are, and not just find out who we are, but accept who we are and embrace who we are and embrace our lives the way they are rather than the way we wish they could be. And we get those ideas to wish they could be another way from our culture. We see others. I see you guys, and it's like, oh gosh, what a beautiful relationship. How nice it would be to have that. But I don't. And that's okay, because this is my life and that's your life, right? And to be able to not wish for something other than what we have is it's a lifelong task, right? And it brings happiness. That's the only way we're going to find happiness.
It's this ability to let go and make life impersonal, even all the way down to like parenthood, right? Like it's there. That's a different human being, different soul having their experience, and they're not mine. They're theirs having their experience, right? And the word that popped out to me when you talked about grace kind of shifting, I think it's a courage component. Like it's a courage to shift you above the line into a place of curiosity, into a place of acceptance, into a place where then now you have the ability to experience love, joy, peace, what you even said, happiness, right? Amongst all the struggle. So thank you for sharing that. And it almost makes me uncomfortable. I mean, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Like just sitting here and listening to that, like I'm just like, this makes me uncomfortable.
Why? Tell me about that.
Well, it just makes me uncomfortable because, like, I find myself going, what the hell am I going to say next? Right? what do I have to offer?
Well, that was in all of that, Marianne, could have been a mic drop. I mean, everything that you said was incredibly powerful and incredibly just delivered from the heart, from your own personal experience. And that really, it shines through, and we could feel that. And I got chills multiple times hearing your story, hearing your experience, but hearing the strength in you saying, sometimes we forget that we have a choice.
And that's what it all comes down to.
And that's just in the times that you cannot even imagine, that you wouldn't want to, right? Like my friend said to me, she lost her daughter really young, and she said, people would say, I can't even imagine. And she'd say, you don't want to. Of course not. Right. So like, even when you're in the depths of that there's hope, there's that pinprick of light coming through, and you can choose to focus on the dark and the emptiness and what's not there, or you can point your consciousness towards the light, and you can start to see that light. And what I'm visualizing is like that light starting to expand and get a little bit more and a little bit more, and bringing that light in. And that's really what you've done.
And that is so true, because the thing about that light and if I'm understanding you correctly, that is something that is always there. It is a constant. And when we're in the darkness, we don't know that all the time. We think we've been abandoned. We think that light is gone. And all it takes is for us to turn around. You mentioned the word courage. People would say, oh, you're so brave. I don't think I could ever do that. I don't know how you could do that. And it was like, I didn't do it. Mm-hmm. I turned. And I welcomed that courage into my life. I turned to the light. Don't get me wrong. There were many, many days, months, even years of being in that darkness, the dark night of the soul, the wrestling with all of these things, and the struggle and the fight. I thought about the caterpillar earlier, and just that we're caterpillars, and we are, and I truly believe this. Every single one of us is trying to become a butterfly, and that's why we're here. We're here to grow our souls, and to be able to embrace that light, because it can be hard, because there's anger, there's disappointment, there's sorrow, heavy sorrow. The whole idea of I don't know if I can say this on the show or not, but WTF, man, right? I won't say it.
Right.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah.
And that's all part of it. And that's all part of that struggle for us to be able to find our way, to find out who we are and who were we born to be? Why are we even here? That's a question that I have had my whole life.
Yeah.
Why are we even here?
What's the point? Right.
Right?
That's in
Yeah.
there. We work with I have worked with a lot of teenagers, and that seems to be one of the narratives. And I'm like, good, you're asking that question. Let's explore that. Like, that's where it begins. If you're in a place in life where you're kind of like, what's the point of all this? Right. And then that is pointing you towards an answer, towards a clarity, towards a purpose. Right. And so I was actually just on a call right before we hopped on this with my mentor in my meditation path. And he was saying that all humans desire an accelerated growth or evolution of their soul, right? All humans, whether you know it or not, right? We all desire this accelerated evolution, right? To evolve faster. Like, this is part of the mind always wanting more, you know? And so when I was listening to you tell your story, the thing that came to my mind was I'm asking you a question here and kind of stating something that I heard at the same time, was the ability to let go of an expectation, or the life is supposed to be a certain way. This ability to like come into a place of acceptance. Do you feel like that was the number one component for you to be able to move beyond that experience into a new experience, and to be able to create the version of you that can stand here and have this conversation, that can get on a TED Talk stage, that can be engaged with incredible work in nonprofit, I mean, and just live your life the way you do in an incredibly inspiring way? Is it that ability to like, hey, they are how they are, accept it, find some sort of strength or gift in it, and then be able to move beyond it? Is that like, it's one of the questions that we usually ask people, is like, what is it that you had to kind of like let go of or stop doing and start doing to be able to create the version of you that's now doing what you're doing, or filling the hole that you see? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think you nailed it right there. I mean, acceptance of life the way it is rather than the way we want it to be. I read a wonderful book, Letting Go of the Person You Used to Be. It was by Lama Surya Das, and it was one of another one of those pivotal books where we are always changing. And you know, we come into this world and we grow up and we're told, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we start setting these life paths, and we start imagining the way life, you know, what was it, John Lennon's line that life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Isn't that the
right?
truth?
Yeah. And so I think a lot of our energy goes into, wait a minute, this isn't what I wanted. This is what I wanted. And starting to swim against the stream, right? Because we're going to make things happen. Right. We are going to do this. And I think when you can get to a place of, okay, what I thought I wanted is not what's happening. And so bloom where you're planted. So what do I do with this this life that I have? The other thing, not just only accepting, but also of how do I say this? There's acceptance that goes into it, but also the idea that I'm not in complete control, and giving that up. Giving up, like I said earlier, I was all about, this is my life and I've got it handled, and I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make life happen, right? And being able to give up the fact that one of the biggest hurdles was I couldn't keep my kids alive. Where did that, you know, talk about our concept of what a parent is, right? parents are here to protect, to nurture, to help their children grow, and to become face to face with the fact that I couldn't save them. And that was my job as a parent, to save them, and to be able to accept that and to integrate that into my life. I don't know that we get over anything. I think we integrate these new understandings. And one of those understandings is that, yes, I cannot control a lot of the big things. What I can control is my reaction to them, is my ability to shift gears, is my ability to go within and to learn how to manage my own thoughts, to learn how to manage myself. And I really think that's where our growth comes from. It doesn't come from the external world. It comes from that internal work, which I know you guys, I believe you guys get that.
Everything you're saying is, I'm just like, mic drop,
right.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over.
Yeah, because and I think that's why we get along so well, because, and that's why I love you guys so much, because we're on similar journeys. And I think that, you know, Heidi, you talked about your friend who lost a child. And I think that the importance of peer-to-peer support when it comes to those kind of things is another crucial piece, because I spent many years trying to make other people understand how devastated I was. I wanted them to know how much I hurt. I wanted them to understand that I was bleeding all over the place on the inside, even if you couldn't see it on the outside. And it was frustrating because, like your friend said, they'll never get it. They'll never understand. And so once I was able to let go of that, and let go of trying to make someone else understand something that I don't want them to ever understand. Right. I would never want them to have to live through this. Letting go of that and seeking out a peer-to-peer group that does get it. And that's where I think it's so powerful when parents get together, when people get together over shared experiences. That gives you a place of connection. It reduces the isolation, and it normalizes what you're feeling too. And that's why I started my Dear Bereaved Parent. I started a Facebook page called Dear Bereaved Parent. And I thought they're just little love notes from one bereaved parent to another. Mm. And it's just, the hope is to just alleviate some of the isolation. I have no answers. The only thing I can tell you is that it's your journey and you can do it. You can.
I love, what a way to take a hole that you see, right? And people having that peer-to-peer support and creating a space that people can go to get that. They can go to see these messages, and because it's on Facebook, people can connect with each other there too if they wish. Yeah. I mean, they could send someone a private message and say, what you wrote there really touched me. I'd love to have a conversation with you on Zoom, get a coffee, you know, let's get together and get into community with each other.
Yeah.
Support each other. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. The ripple effect of that is, it can't be measured, because when somebody has a message like that and they feel touched by that, whether they say anything to anyone else or not about it, they're going to carry through their day differently. They're going to impact other people's lives differently, because there's this glimmer of hope. There's this feeling of being seen, heard, understood. Like, that's what you were looking for in wanting people to know. Do you understand what I'm going through? It's like you wanted to be seen, right, but from people, right, who could never see what you were actually experiencing because they hadn't experienced it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's no way to, you know, sometimes Wittgenstein has a quote that says, language is a tailor shop where nothing fits. And so there's times when words just can't express. And that's why when you asked earlier about what can you do for someone who's grieving, sometimes just sitting with them, you don't even have to speak. doing their laundry for them. I mean, little acts of kindness. A friend of mine whose son died said she remembers her neighbor coming and knocking on her door, picking up her laundry and bringing it back clean and folded. And that was the only interaction they had. And it was one of the most memorable things that she can remember from those early days of, so just a little act of kindness.
Yeah, don't underestimate the small things and
right.
do for somebody. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this conversation could go on forever.
Oh yeah. But there's so much left to talk about still. Yeah.
2 questions for you. First one is, can we be friends more? Like spend
I
more
hope
time?
so.
Can we spend more time together, first of all? And I'm going to seek that out, just so you know. All right. Second, just give me a little bit of forewarning. Second one is, I heard that you had the Facebook group, and what was the name of it again? I didn't quite catch the name.
Well, it's called Dear Bereaved Parents.
Dear Bereaved Parents. Okay.
And it's not a group. It's just a little, it's just an outward facing, and I just started it. So I'm just getting it off the ground. But
I would love to hear other ways that you are engaging. I know a few of them are, but in the world that is helping you to feel like that you're filling that hole, right? That you're leading people towards connection, that you're bringing people together to understand what they're dealing with, and giving people opportunities to serve others, right? Everything that we started this conversation with, kind of want to come full circle, and hear what it is that you do in the world currently. That is
so. Yeah, so I work for, I mentioned a nonprofit. It's called Elevations, a Children's Therapy Resource Foundation, and we provide funds for kids with special needs to get therapy services. And it's a often unnoticed, unseen need that is out there. And so the last couple of years, I've been working really hard to get that information out to the public, what these families are facing and how others can help. We do a couple of fundraisers a year. The Stash Dash is June 10th. And we've turned this into a community event. So we're going to have booths. It's going to be at Plants Ferry Park on June 10th. So even if you don't want to run, you can come out and just enjoy the day. So we also do a ghost ball in the fall, which is a huge Halloween costume party. And again, nonprofit fundraisers are basically ways to engage the larger community in something that is going to have a ripple effect. It's different than just going out dancing or going to a concert. When you go to a nonprofit fundraiser, you are going out dancing and having a great time, but you're also creating that ripple, that impact that is going to affect everyone else's life. And so I invite people to attend as many nonprofit fundraisers as you can, because not only will you have a good time, you will also be doing good in the world. So
change your date night to make it a nonprofit night instead of just a night out at a restaurant or something. I love that. And
and there are so many nonprofits too. So
yeah, there are a lot of great causes. I love though a connection that I made between something that you said and then the work that you're doing with Elevations. And I'm sure you've probably made this connection yourself, but something that I heard was you said, I felt like I wanted to be able to help my kids, but I couldn't. And now you're helping families get the resources that they need to help their kids so that they're not feeling, in a sense, like helpless in their situation. Like, my kid needs this therapy, my kid needs this equipment, and I can't do it as a parent. So being able to help those families get those grants that they need to get the resources that they need it's got to be healing for you in some ways too, given your past experience.
Oh, very much so. And it's we do what we can. And understanding our limitations. I used to be with the American Childhood Cancer Organization. And so a big part of my work there was working with families whose child was diagnosed, but went through treatment and went beyond treatment, either into, survival and going on to a healthy life, or going on to a life full of medical issues caused by the treatments, or bereavement. And I still volunteer with them with their bereaved group. I'm just really I'm a huge advocate of peer-to-peer support. And so you're right. We do what we can, where we can, right? Yeah.
So do you have a few more minutes? I have one more question.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. A few more minutes. Okay. So, coming back to this is kind of two questions in one, and I'll start with the question, and then I'll kind of give you a little bit of preface to it too. Okay. Do you have a larger vision with the work that you're doing, with the ripple effect that you want to make? And the reason I'm asking that is because I'm always curious about this as a human experience, being in a place of acceptance and choice. And also there's Viktor Frankl talks about to pull people out of their current experiences or to elevate them even in the struggle. In the concentration camp, he talked about how he would elevate himself by holding on to a future, holding on to him being on stage and sharing what he had learned about the mind, really, and the human experience and suffering and finding meaning in life, right? And so the two-part question I have for you is, do you have a larger vision for yourself, and how much do you hold on to the future, right? And when we talk about future, Viktor Frankl breaks it down into two components: the future, meaning your human life, and the eternal, right? And so just curious, with the work that you're currently doing, because when I hear you talk and I'm seeing the momentum in your life, even hey, a year ago, you're on a TED stage, about a year ago, wasn't it?
October. Yeah.
9 months ago, whatever it was. October, almost a year ago. Yeah. So about 9 months. This seems to me like you're just getting started. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's how it seems to me. Right. That's how it views to me. So I don't know if my question makes any sense, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually in the middle of submitting a book proposal for a journal. I want to do a Dear Bereaved Parents journal. And one of the things I talked about was I feel like I am now ready to I feel like I've done enough of my own work now that I'm ready to step out onto a larger stage, out into a larger community. Where that goes, I have a very hard time living with what's coming next. So because I'm not a good planner. I believe that I need to do when I have an idea, I need to do it and put it into action. And then whatever happens from that is not in my control. What's in my control is what I can do right now, and where that's going to lead and where that's going to go. I have a really hard time visualizing those things. So to answer your question, I don't know where it's going, but I do also have a sense that I am stepping into a new phase of what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah. I sense that, and I think this is the line that I'm constantly navigating, and I encourage people, the ability, you have a natural tendency to release your attachment to outcomes, right? Which allows for you to be more present and actually perform at a higher level. It's something we actually teach in our program, the releasement of outcomes, meaning let's see this playing out 3 different ways: best, worst case, and neutral, and recognize how we're going to learn and evolve and grow, and the gift that we can receive and the lesson that we can learn from the possible outcomes, which releases our attachment to them, allows for me to come back in the moment and just focus on the current task, right? And showing up as fully as we possibly can. So you seem to be naturally doing that on your own, which that's always this fine line of creating a vision. Like, and I say vision, I don't mean driving in Lamborghinis and riding on luxury
Right.
boats and,
Yeah.
those type of things. I mean a ripple effect, right? A ripple effect of an impact and what people maybe are experiencing, on a grander scale because of the work that you're doing. And you've already done it to a massive scale, whether you recognize that or not. Like, your work and what you have done for yourself is your work already has an eternal ripple effect. Right here, right now, you could completely stop, and you've done it, just so you know.
Well, I think my goal is to be who I was born to be, and to take what has happened in my life and to use it for as a connection for a greater fabric, to help improve improve all of us. The world, I tend to stay away from improving or changing the world, because the world is always going to be what it is.
Yeah.
It's not going to change. What has to change is us.
Yes.
Internally, and who we are. And so if I can continue to be able to improve myself, and then so many people have held my hand and brought me along. And if I can hold a hand and bring others along, then that's what I want to do.
Yeah, I need to highlight what you said there, because I think it's Dr. Hawkins, David Hawkins talks about that, which I know you're familiar with Dr. Hawkins' work in letting go. Are you familiar with Dr. Hawkins?
I don't know. Do you mind if I walk a little bit?
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Oh, sorry.
So
Yeah.
So is that this idea that we're trying to change the world is not ever going to be attainable? Like, the only thing we can
Right.
is ourselves. And I think that is like the biggest takeaway that we could take even from this, the acceptance, the ability that that we have choice, and then that the only thing that we can really change is continue to improve ourselves, which will create the ripple effect. Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm
And I
gonna be
think
listening- I'm going to be
that
listening
is,
back to this for sure.
yeah, that's 100%. Yeah.
Thank
The
you.
world
so
is,
much.
the world's going to be what the world is.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much, Marianne. And again, just
Oh, thank you.
appreciate
Yeah.
your time so much. And
We're going to add links to elevations if people want to check that out. We'll add a link to your Dear Briefed Parent page, and anything else that you want us to share. I'll add those links in the show notes so that people can get in touch with you if they want to, and they can support some of the things that you're doing out there in the world as well.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
I appreciate it. So, yeah, talk soon.
okay,
Right.
until next time.